अप्रैल 79 से सितंबर 24 का जर्नी था, ऑलमोस्ट 45 ईयर जर्नी. इफ यू टेक द नंबर ऑफ डेज व्हेन द मार्केट मेक्स एन ऑल टाइम हाई, that is only 7% of the days. One man's crisis is another man's opportunity. It is only a question of how you look at it and how you are prepared for it. If anybody is an investor in the market, every 1 to 3 years the market is going to drop 10 to 15%. Every 4 to 5 years it will drop 20 to 30%. Every 10 years it will drop 30 to 50%. Valuations matter. Story jo bhi ho, eventually returns are a function of valuations plus the earnings growth that accrue to you as an investor over a period of time. So valuations matter. How do you make sure that you can handle the volatility? Asset allocation is your friend. Let me go to the topic that I'm going to talk about today. क्योंकि people are of the opinion, लोग समझते हैं कि market में पैसा बनता है based on how the market performs, of course, but also they think it's a function of many things. But what they don't realize is that actually the most important thing in making money is your behavior. So when you think about making wealth, आप लोगों का जो business है, you are trying to help your customers to create wealth for themselves, because those customers are trying to create wealth for their journey over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. आप लोग भी from your savings, hopefully each one of you individually is a mutual fund investor. How many of you in this room have your own investments in mutual funds? Wonderful, wonderful. So happy to see this. When I was your age, I didn't have any money because I didn't have any savings only. But it's wonderful that you are starting early, and this is the most important thing. Of course, you do need the market to support you to create wealth. You need good businesses to create wealth. जैसे introduction में बोला गया था, it mentioned about the fact that I think companies that can self-sustain their growth, they are the ones which create wealth. B, it is the valuations which over time really, when you use that as an opportunity, it helps you create wealth. But the most important thing is behavior. And that is what we are going to talk about today. So, what I'm going to talk about in the next few slides, ये actually Morningstar का हर साल या हर 2 साल एक study करते हैं कि what was the investment return generated by the mutual fund. आप सब लोगों ने mutual fund का fact sheet देखा है? Correct? And when you open it, it shows last 1 year return, last 3 years return, last 5 years return, 10 year inception, etc. etc. हमारे fact sheet में जब आप देखेंगे तो आप देखेंगे कि 20 साल, 25 साल, 30 साल का भी return है, because some of our products started so many years ago and they are still being operated. But what the Morningstar return does, it looks at this return. ये कौन सा return है? ये fact sheet का return है कि what did the fund generate over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Then they look at investor ने कितना कमाया, right? Because ये fact sheet का return है, but investor may have come at some point of time, then they exited somewhere, right? Maybe September 2024 they got very excited, उन्होंने सब पैसा market में डाला. अभी 30 दिन पहले जब पूरा पर्शियन गल्फ का सब नाटक चल रहा था, डर के मारे उन्होंने शायद पैसा निकाल दिया. So what the Morningstar study does is it tries to ascertain कि फंड का रिटर्न क्या है और जो इन्वेस्टर है उनका एक्चुअली क्या रिटर्न रियलाइज हुआ. क्योंकि कभी कभी इन्वेस्टर गलत टाइम पे पैसा डालते हैं और गलत टाइम पे पैसा निकाल देते हैं. एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ दैट जो इन्वेस्टर का रिटर्न है वो एक्चुअली इन्वेस्टमेंट से कम है, एंड दिस गैप इज व्हाट वी कॉल द बिहेवियर गैप, राइट? तो व्हाट डज द मॉर्निंगस्टार रिटर्न स्टडी शो? उनका स्टडी ये दिखाता है, एंड दे हैव लुक्ड एट प्रीटी मच ऑल द म्यूचुअल फंड्स अवेलेबल इन इंडिया. दिस वाज द लास्ट स्टडी व्हिच केम आउट इन 2022. आई थिंक द 25 study is yet to come out. But what it shows is that over 10 years, if a fund has earned 12.33%, the investor has not earned that much. Investor has earned 2.8% less, which is 9.53%. क्यों? क्योंकि गलत टाइम पे उन्होंने फंड में पैसा डालना शुरू किया और शायद गलत टाइम पे उन्होंने मार्केट से पैसा निकाल दिया. right? So that is why their return is lower by that 2.8%, that number that you see here. Even if you look at a 3-year period, you can see that on a 3-year basis the fund has delivered 10.4845%, whereas the investor return is only 8.97%. there is a gap of 1.48% over there, right? ये गैप क्यों हो रहा है? और ये एक फंड की बात नहीं है, उन्होंने सब फंड मिला के ये नंबर कैलकुलेट किया है कि हाउ मच इज दैट गैप. और जब आप एक्चुअल इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात करते हैं कि अगर कोई इन्वेस्टर ने 1 करोड़ पैसा डाला हुआ था, व्हाट वुड दैट रुपीज, उनका कितना एक नोशनल लॉस हुआ है, वो यहां पे है, राइट? कि अगर आप 3 साल का देखेंगे तो द इन्वेस्टर हु रिमेन्ड फॉर द फुल पीरियड विच इज द फैक्ट शीट रिटर्न, दे मेड 1.35 करोड़, लेकिन जो गलत टाइम पे आके गलत टाइम पे निकल गए उनका रिटर्न इज ओनली 1.29 करोड़. मतलब देयर कैपिटल इन्वेस्टेड became 1.29. so there is a gap of almost 5 lakhs over there. and जब आप यहां पे 10 साल की बात करते हैं तो the gap becomes almost 71 lakhs. फैक्ट शीट के हिसाब से अगर किसी ने वहां पे पैसा डाल के उसके बारे में भूल गए तो उनका रिटर्न होता था 3.2 करोड़ आफ्टर 10 years, लेकिन बिकॉज ऑफ रॉन्ग डिसीजंस ऑफ एंट्री एंड एग्जिट द इन्वेस्टर्स हैव मेड ओनली 2.49 करोड़. दिस इज अ एवरेज कैलकुलेशन. तो देयर इज अ गैप बिटवीन फंड ने क्या रिटर्न दिया और इन्वेस्टर ने एक्चुअली अर्न किया, क्योंकि वो गलत टाइम पे मार्केट पे आए, गलत टाइम पे मार्केट से निकल गए, शायद गलत टाइम पे एक स्ट्रैटेजी चूज किया. इसीलिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. व्हेन आई वाज कमिंग इन, आई मेट some of the team members from the research side, and obviously they do a very important role of identifying kaun sa scheme अच्छा है, and that is when they are identifying is when you should be supporting it, and you should support it even when the fund goes through difficult times. If you keep going in and out of schemes, you actually end up losing money, क्योंकि सब funds के एक साइकिल रहते हैं जहाँ पे वो अच्छा करेंगे, एक समय पे शायद उनका परफॉर्मेंस उतना अच्छा नहीं रहेगा, लेकिन the best advantage is in remaining invested in that funds. So that is the value of what your research team is doing with this research, is to guide you in terms of how to select funds, but equally important to remain invested in those funds. So why does this behavior a gap happen? It is because of volatility and emotional responses to the market. अगर आप सेंसेक्स का पूरा लाइफ का हिसाब देखेंगे, सेंसेक्स शुरू हुआ था अप्रैल 1979 में, राइट? वहां पे ये उसका एक लाइन है ऑल द वे टिल ईरान इजराइल यूएस वॉर, जहां पे दिस सितंबर 24 से लेके मार्केट इट हैज कम डाउन. दिस इज अपडेटेड एज ऑफ आई थिंक मार्च 31. इट्स ऑब्वियसली कम बैक अ लिटिल बिट सिंस देन, बट ये जो पूरा एक रिटर्न है, दिस इज अ रिटर्न ऑफ 14.5% CAGR. Now, I don't know what number you use, but what number do you use in your modeling for clients कि उनका equity का return क्या होना चाहिए? हाँ? 12%? Exactly. तो ये आप मानेंगे कि उससे तो एक बढ़िया रिटर्न है, लेकिन एक चीज इंपॉर्टेंट है कि लोग सोचते हैं कि ये रिटर्न तभी आता है जब हर रोज आपको या तो मार्केट शाबाशी देगा या हर रोज न्यूज़पेपर के हेडलाइन आपको खुश रखेंगे ना. ये रिटर्न होता है डिस्पाइट द फैक्ट कि ये सेंसेक्स के लाइफ टाइम में इतने सारे क्राइसिस हुए हैं. बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट क्राइसिस, हर्षद मेहता स्कैम, पॉलिटिकल अनसर्टेनिटी, .com बबल, मार्केट सेल ऑफ, ग्लोबल फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस, यूरोजोन डेट क्राइसिस, ग्लोबल सेल ऑफ, कोरोना वायरस, ट्रेड टैरिफ, ईरान वर्सेस यूएस वॉर. इसमें एक भी न्यूज हेडलाइन मैंने अच्छा न्यूज हेडलाइन दिया आपको? यस और नो? सब खराब हेडलाइन है. इन स्पाइट ऑफ दैट द मार्केट हैज गिवन दिस रिटर्न. तो जब आप किसी कस्टमर से बात करते हैं कि आप 10 साल, 15 साल, 20 साल का जर्नी आपका रहेगा इन्वेस्टमेंट का, मैं तो मानता हूँ एक्चुअली हर इन्वेस्टर का इन्वेस्टमेंट जर्नी 40-50 साल का जर्नी है. उस जर्नी में ऐसे काफ़ी सारे सेटबैक्स आएंगे. अगर हमने इन्वेस्टर को तैयार किया कि ऐसे आपके सेटबैक्स आएंगे, तो जब सेटबैक आएगा उनके दिमाग में दे आर ऑलरेडी प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर इट, दे आर एबल टू हैंडल इट. अगर आप बोलेंगे कि नहीं ये पिछले 40 साल का स्टोरी जाने दीजिए, यहाँ पे ना यहाँ से अगले 10 साल के लिए स्ट्रेट लाइन जैसे मार्केट जाएगा, तो देन यू आर एक्चुअली प्रेडिक्टिंग समथिंग विच इज मोस्ट प्रोबेबली नॉट गोइंग टू हैपन एंड विच विल नॉट हैपन, राइट. प्रोग्रेस विल हैपन बट वो सीधा लाइन में नहीं होता है, इट इज ऑलवेज अप एंड डाउन, बिकॉज द स्टोरी ऑफ प्रोग्रेस इज इंटरस्पर्स्ड विद सेटबैक्स एंड क्राइसिस. This is true of the markets, this is true of each and every one of us in our personal life. Every setback, every crisis you go through teaches you something, and it actually makes you stronger to handle the next crisis, to handle the next crisis. And शायद जब वो crisis आएगा वो actually आपके लिए एक opportunity बन जाएगा, right? So progress is a story which is interspersed with setbacks and crises. We should never think कि यहाँ से तो सब अच्छा एक डायरेक्शन में जाएगा, कुछ ना कुछ नया होते रहेगा वर्ल्ड में. ये वर्ल्ड का एक that's the way the world is, you can't change it, right? So investing is like a marathon, it is not a sprint. यहाँ तो हर साल जनवरी में मुंबई में मैराथन होता है. Any marathoners here? Nobody? No marathon runners? Nobody trying it? Okay. I ran the marathon for 10 years, फिर मैंने बंद कर दिया. I didn't run the full marathon, I only ran 21 kilometers, but I did it for 10 years, then I hurt my foot, so I stopped running after that. But important thing to remember is that investing is like a marathon. जैसे कि मैंने पहले बोला, वो investing का तो journey है, that is a 40-year, 50-year journey. It is not a 1-year, 2-year journey. So investing is more like a marathon, it is not like a sprint. Right? Sprinter का काम होता है to run as fast as possible, right? In less than a minute. Short races, 100 meter, 400 meter. Explosive power, quick bursts of speed. And the marathoners race is completely different. Multiple hours, steady, consistent, right? It's very long, 26 miles, 42 kilometers, the full marathon. The training focus is endurance. Endurance is the most important thing in a marathon, right? Because you have to keep running for 3 hours, 4 hours. Of course, the prize marathoners do it in 2 hours, 7 minutes, 12 minutes. But, you know, most other, I would say, amateurs, 4 hours, 5 hours. So to run for 4 hours, 5 hours non-stop is just very, very difficult. And what you are interested is in long runs, tempo runs, slightly fast, slightly slower, slightly fast, slightly slower, and you do things like hill training. So you actually try running up the hill, then downhill again. Downhill sounds very simple, but believe me, once you have run 10, 15, 20 kilometers, when you go downhill, you can feel the shock hitting your leg. It is worse than trying to run uphill. Uphill is only a cardiac struggle, right? Your lungs have to pump. But when you go downhill, your ankles and your knees are getting the full shock. It's actually even worse. People prefer to run uphill actually once they have done 30 kilometers than to run downhill. But you know, that's the way it is. So that's the important thing to remember, that investing is more like a marathon. It is not a sprint. But we'll come back to this topic later. अभी जब किसी का investing का journey रहता है, तो what I find is that they get very excited कि अरे मार्केट ने तो एक ऑल टाइम हाई कर दिया, राइट? अभी किसी का इन्वेस्टमेंट का जर्नी 20 साल, 25 साल, 30 साल का अगर जर्नी है, तो मैं मानता हूं कि उस जर्नी में काफी सारे हाई आएंगे कि नहीं? हाउ मेनी पीपल हियर हैव बीन इन्वेस्टिंग फॉर मोर देन 3 years और एटलीस्ट बीन ट्रैकिंग? काफी सारे. तो 3 साल में आपने काफी नए न्यू हाई तो देखे होंगे, राइट? 22 में एक हाई था, फिर 23 में था, 24 में था. एक्चुअली निफ्टी में तो इवन इन February 2026 इट मेड अ लाइफ टाइम हाई, करेक्ट? राइट? तो पीपल थिंक दैट इन माय इन्वेस्टमेंट जर्नी देयर विल बी लॉट्स ऑफ न्यू हाइज. बट आपको मालूम है कि डेटा क्या दिखाता है? डेटा दिखाता है कि हाँ, ये जो अप्रैल 79 से सितंबर 24 का जर्नी था, right, almost 45-year journey, if you take the number of days when the market makes an all-time high, that is only 7% of the days. और ये जो March 31 का recent past में सबसे low level का market है, आप मानेंगे, right? उसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? हम उसको बोलते हैं 52-week low, तो ये 45 years की जर्नी में only 7% of the days are lifetime high, 9% of the days are 52-week low. इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि you will experience more short-term pain and less of those days when you actually feel कि हाँ यार, this is actually making a lifetime high and I'm benefiting from it, right? So this is a story of endurance. अगर आपको वो चाहिए तो आपको ये सहना पड़ेगा. This is the endurance story which is part of any investment journey. In a lighter vein, the less you look, the better off you will be. The more you look at those 52-week lows, आप उससे एक nervousness आ जाती है, उसके कारण आप short-sighted decision लेते हैं. That is what actually hurts you. So more lows than highs. Investment journey में you will experience more short-term lows then you will experience lifetime highs. You have to be prepared for that. अगर आपको long term में कुछ पाना है तो short term में आपको थोड़ा बहुत वो pain endure करना ही पड़ेगा. वो market का 45 years का history है और अगर 45 years के बाद ऐसे ही एक मनी हनी का इवेंट होगा उस समय मैं बहुत कॉन्फिडेंट हूं कि इस डेटा में कुछ बदलाव नहीं आएगा. 90 इयर्स का स्टोरी रहेगा बट द डेटा विल शो यू द सेम थिंग बिकॉज दिस इज द रियलिटी ऑफ हाउ मार्केट्स बिहेव ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड. द स्टॉक मार्केट विल ऑलवेज फाइंड अ वे टू सरप्राइज यू. मतलब कुछ ना कुछ तो होता रहेगा. आपने आई शोड यू दैट स्लाइड अर्लियर एज वेल. 45 year of journey of Sensex. You know, wars happen, coronavirus happens, .com happens, scams happen. So the stock market will always find something or the other which will keep surprising you. Investment is not a journey of trying to predict the future because nobody can predict the future. It is all about understanding the probabilities involved, and when the probability is in your favor you should be more willing to take risk. When the probability is not in your favor you should take less risk, right? That is why there are things like diversification, asset allocation, valuation, comfort. All of these things are only trying to make the probability slightly in your favor. None of these are methods which tell you exactly future में क्या होगा. जब मैं, आपने तो सुना होगा 1992 I am Bangalore, I passed out. मैंने जब पास आउट किया तो मुझे लगा कि अरे मेरे पास MBA डिग्री है, मेरे पास कंप्यूटर है, एक्सेल है, कंपनीज के पास एक्सेस है, मतलब कि हाउ कैन आई नॉट मेक मनी, राइट? बिकॉज आई वॉज वेरी फोकस्ड ऑन प्रेडिक्टिंग. 2-3 साल ने मार्केट में 3-4 बार एक थप्पड़ दे के सीधा कर दिया कि कोई प्रेडिक्ट नहीं कर सकता है. आपकी डिग्री आपको हेल्प नहीं आती है, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट एक्सेल शीट आपको हेल्प नहीं करती है, बिकॉज द फ्यूचर बाय डेफिनेशन इज ऑलवेज अनप्रेडिक्टेबल. हाँ, एक चीज़ है, आपको थोड़ा बहुत एक ऑप्टिमिस्टिक व्यू ऑफ लाइफ, द वर्ल्ड एंड प्रोग्रेस हमेशा लेना चाहिए. और आप लोगों को तो मतलब हम लोग अभी भूल जाते हैं कि कोविड के शुरू होने के कितना 6 साल पहले हुआ था, राइट? 6 years ago at this date हम लोग सब घर पे, you know, we were hiding inside our house कि यार वायरस ना आ जाए घर के अंदर. तो even at that time I used to always tell people कि you know, मार्केट को छोड़ो, eventually we will solve this problem because humanity will solve the problem. And it was our doctors, it was our scientists who figured out how to create that vaccine. All of us got vaccinated and then we were able to tackle it. So the human mind and the desire of human beings to create a better tomorrow for themselves is a force of progress. So that you must always be optimistic about if you are an investor. Ki eventually somebody somewhere will find a way to make the world a better place, and that is what gets reflected in equity markets over a long period of time. So this is very important to remember that success is an outcome, but success doesn't mean that you have to be right every day. Success doesn't mean that the market has to go up every day. ये जो volatility जो है ना, मैं बोलता हूँ कि it is a feature of the market, it is not a bug, right? Bug क्या होता है? Whether you are using an Android phone or your iOS phone, कभी कभी होता है. Does the phone freeze? Yeah, stops working, you have to reboot. Sometimes your computer also does that, no option, you reboot. Yeah. So in all of the software we actually say that it is a bug. It is a software bug which causes that freeze. But in markets, it is not a bug. It is a feature. Freezing and going down is a feature of the market. It is not a bug. Why do I say that? If you take the entire journey from April 1979 to March 2026, only 53% of the days the market was positive. अब एक एक दिन निकाल के देखेंगे, total number of days 10,942, only 53%, so roughly only about 5,300 days were positive. 4,700 days were negative, roughly, right? On the days that it was positive, it gave average return of 1.05%. On the days that it was negative, it gave an average return of minus 1.03%. तो वो जो पूरा आपने कंपाउंडिंग का स्टोरी देखा 14.5%, that 14.5% is coming out of this small gap, 1.05 plus and minus 1.03 on the down days. When you compound it over 10,000 days, and when it's up only 53% of the time, it ends up giving you this outcome that you are seeing over there. Right? So that 14.5% return, this 586, 1 lakh invested becoming 5.8 crores, it has happened despite 53%, 47% of the days being negative. Such a fine difference. So once again, volatility is a feature. It is not a bug in the market. We have to prepare our investors. The main message I want to give you is that when you are talking to investors, अगर आपने investor को prepare किया कि आपके journey में volatility होगी, कभी कभी आपको लगेगा कि मैंने सबसे बड़ा गलती किया of coming to equity market, एक महीने में market 10% नीचे आ गया. If you have prepared him for that, फिर वो उनको crisis नहीं समझेंगे, वो उसको एक opportunity समझेंगे. And we'll come to that later. So this is the thing we need to prepare our investors for, कि देखिए end में तो अच्छा ही होगा. So that is the thing that you need to remember when you look at this, that you have to prepare the investor कि आपकी picture अभी बाकी है, आप टिके रहिए, and that is when you will be able to achieve that outcome which is what your target is. How many of you have traveled by road from Bombay to Pune? Nobody? हाँ, सब लोग गए होंगे. Exactly. तो 2004 या 5 में ये मुंबई पुणे एक्सप्रेसवे शुरू हुआ था. तो उस समय I had just bought a new car, so I got very excited because they said that on the expressway, by the way, when the expressway was started, the speed limit used to be 120 kilometers per hour on the expressway. वो expressway जो है वो यहाँ से शुरू नहीं होती है, वो actually when you go slightly beyond Kalamboli, which is where you enter the expressway, and then much before you reach Pune city, वो खत्म हो जाती है. तो it is a distance which you can travel in 1.5 hours, 97 kilometers. Right? तो मैंने भी वही न्यूज़ पढ़ा. I got very excited कि अरे I can reach Pune in less than 2 hours, but वो कभी हुआ नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि the expressway is not sitting in BKC, it is starting at Kalamboli and it is finishing here much before you reach the actual Pune city. So there is one stretch where the car goes very fast. और मेरे compliance team ने बोला कि अभी तो speed limit 120 नहीं है, लेकिन 2019 तक था. तो इसलिए मैंने वो मार्क भी कर दिया कि 2019 तक था when you could drive at 120 kilometers on the expressway. But my simple point is this, कि there is a difference in the world between average speed and maximum speed. There is a difference between what the market gives you when it is showing its best behavior and what the average return is likely to be. जो इन्वेस्टर सिर्फ मार्च 2020 से मार्च 2025 का रिटर्न देखते हैं, वो बोलते हैं कि अरे 25% तो मैंने भी कमा लिया. But that is not the average. That is the speed that you got when you were driving on this section of the highway. जब actually आप मेरे ऑफिस से निकलेंगे BKC में और अगर आपका मीटिंग है सदाशिव पेट जो पुणे के बिल्कुल अंदर है, तो टू कवर दिस 156 kilometers it takes you 3 hours, not 1.5 hours. This is the point where you go at maximum speed. And real life of investing looks more like this. Average speed is always lower than the maximum speed. लेकिन ये गलती सब लोग करते हैं कि वो 5 साल का है, उनका एक एक्सपीरियंस है, तो उसी स्पीड को समझते हैं कि ये लाइफ का एक्सपीरियंस रहेगा ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग. वो नहीं होता है. बिकॉज इन द मार्केट्स अगेन यू विल गेट वॉलेटिलिटी. 1-2 साल आएंगे जहाँ पे आपको रिटर्न मिलेगा ही नहीं. आज के दिन पे आप देखेंगे सितंबर 24 टू टुडे नो रिटर्न, May 2024 to May 2026 no return. Correct? So that is why your average speed is lower than the maximum speed. But if you stay persistent, if you stay consistent, if you remain patient, if you focus on what your goal is, over the long time you will get the benefit of that compounding. So this is the simple point about that कि don't focus on point to point returns. You can pick a low point, pick a high point, वहाँ आपको काफ़ी सारी स्पीड दिखाई देगी. लेकिन जब आप अपना पूरा एक इन्वेस्टमेंट जर्नी करेंगे तो आपको हमेशा याद रहना चाहिए कि जो रोलिंग रिटर्न्स हैं, दैट इज़ अ बेटर इंडिकेटर ऑफ व्हाट यू कैन एक्सपेक्ट एज एन इन्वेस्टर, नॉट द पॉइंट टू पॉइंट रिटर्न्स जो एक मैक्सिमम स्पीड हाईवे पे होती है. दिस इज अनदर वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट. मेरे पूरे करियर में आई स्टार्टेड गेटिंग इन्वॉल्व इन म्यूचुअल फंड्स एट कोटक महिंद्रा म्यूचुअल फंड इन 2001. That was the first time I became a fund manager of a mutual fund. And so as somebody who is part of the mutual fund industry, it has now been 25 years. इसमें मैंने एक चीज़ देखा है कि जिस इन्वेस्टर का टाइमलाइन 1 to 3 years का है, उनमें आपको काफी सारे अनहैप्पी और डिसअपॉइंटेड इन्वेस्टर्स मिलेंगे. लेकिन जिस इन्वेस्टर का टाइमलाइन 8 साल 10 साल के ऊपर निकल गया है ना, उनको वो एक्सपीरियंस हो गई है वॉलेटिलिटी की, उसमें आपको कोई अनहैप्पी इन्वेस्टर नहीं मिलता है. तो द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग दैट ईच एंड एवरी वन ऑफ यू एज पार्ट ऑफ अ वेल्थ मैनेजमेंट टीम एट मनी हनी, as part of that team which is trying to ensure कि आपका जो investor है, they should be able to achieve their life goals, the most important thing is in the first 1 to 5 years you have to handhold the investor. अगर investor इस volatility से डर गया, then it is not good for their financial health and it is not good for you also. But if you are able to handhold them during this return, then उसके बाद उनको सिर्फ अच्छे दिन देखने को मिलते हैं. So you never find unhappy 10-year mutual fund investors. Most unhappy mutual fund investors are 1 to 3 year investors. So that is what we as an industry have to do. That is what each and every one of you with Anoop's leadership, I'm sure you all are doing it, have to handle the client in the first 1 to 3 years. Because what this is showing you is the Nifty 50 TRI return. What is the maximum return in a 1 year period? What is the worst return in a 1 year period? So the best 1 year return is plus 103%, worst 1 year return is minus 56%, median return is 13%. तो वहाँ पे many investors who experience that red will have an unhappy experience. लेकिन जब आप इन्वेस्टर को 3 साल 5 साल के ऊपर हैंड होल्ड करते हैं, उनको एक इन्वेस्टर की तरफ बने रखते हैं, तो ये गैप बहुत छोटा हो जाता है. There are very few adverse experiences and most experiences for the investor become positive experiences. So that is the most important thing each and every one of you can do, both for yourselves and in the best interest of the investor, to handle them through the difficult time. क्योंकि जब वो 3 साल 5 साल का जर्नी हो जाता है उनका, I have never found any investor कि 20 साल के बाद मुझे आके बोले कि अरे मेरा म्यूचुअल फंड में पूरा I have had a bad experience. जो 20 years हैं इंडस्ट्री में, they have all had a good experience because they have experienced the volatility, they have remained invested, and so their outcomes look more like these numbers. Crisis or opportunity? This is actually something I learned from my father many years ago. And he used to always say this, कि one man's crisis is another man's opportunity. It is only a question of how you look at it and how you are prepared for it. So very simply, there are two investors, reactive investor, prepared investor. मेरा क्रिकेट का नॉलेज थोड़ा कम है. I used to watch a lot more cricket maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. But maybe some of you are familiar with those names. So you all have heard of Virendra Sehwag, Viru? Yeah, you have heard. You all have watched him play? Very exciting. But on the other side, there was another batsman from that same era known as Jammy. Anybody knows who's Jammy? Rahul Dravid, right? Also known as Mr. Consistent. When you see these two, reactive investor and prepared investor, just think of Virubai, great cricketer no doubt, but he falls in that category. Very, very reactive. आज भी आप ट्विटर पे उनके कमेंट देखेंगे तो वैसे ही है. आजकल सब चीज के ऊपर आप वो कमेंट करते हैं और कुछ भी कमेंट कर लेंगे वो. Right? He is of that kind. It was exciting to watch him, but very impulsive. वो जो भी टाइप का विकेट है वो उसी टाइप का वो खेलेंगे, because he was just impulsive and he was prey to his biases. कुछ प्लानिंग नहीं है, जाओ बाहर कुछ खेलो, जो भी होगा देखा जाएगा. Right? Not very good for the team. I'm not saying he had margin calls, but जो एक impulsive investor है, जो ज़्यादा रिस्क लेते हैं, उनको कभी कभी लगता है कि यार इसमें तो बहुत पैसा बन सकता है, चलो not only I will buy the shares, I will buy futures and options because I can make even more money. When a crisis comes, for them you see the pressure of margin calls. और जो इस साइड पे हैं, जो मैं बोलता हूँ कि एक prepared investor है, that the model is a Rahul Dravid, right? तो राहुल द्रविड was once asked कि आप कैसे प्रिपेयर करते थे to go to England and play on those grassy pitches where the ball bounces, because वैसे pitch तो है ही नहीं इंडिया पे. So he said नहीं, what I used to do, I used to get the best fast bowlers I know. I used to play on the cricket mat, and on the mat I would tell them to put some water as well, because then the ball really tends to bounce all around the place. So he was preparing himself. If I have to go in London and play in that conditions, how do I prepare myself? I prepare myself by creating that kind of a pitch in Bangalore with the mat, with the water, so that when I go there, I will be ready for it. Right? So that's the kind of person he is. Well planned, overcomes biases, adheres to asset allocation. Right? Very important. We'll come to it later. Diversified portfolio for risk mitigation. He was always very clear. I want to play session by session. If every session I remain at my wicket, I will eventually make a big score. Not that you go there and try to hit the ball out. And whenever there was turmoil, मतलब अगर एक difficult wicket है, that is the kind of pitch on which Rahul Dravid would always shine, because he was always prepared for that. Very easy pitch, sometimes he would do well, sometimes he would not do well. But on a very flat pitch which favors the batsman, typically a lot of players like Virubai used to do much better, but on the difficult pitch is where you would actually see somebody like Rahul Dravid come forward. So to my mind, if you think as these two people as models of investors, what you want to be is more like Rahul Dravid, who shows you the benefit of preparation. High price of hitting pause. We've already covered this. Long-term wealth creation isn't about predicting the perfect moment to buy. It is just the simple discipline of staying the course through volatility. This is nothing but what can be the return if you remain invested, and what happens when you try the market. Every time you see the market collapse 3, 4, 5%, you withdraw from the market. When you do that, your return looks like that orange line. जो वॉलेटिलिटी से डर जाता है और मार्केट के से निकल जाता है, उनका रिटर्न वो ऑरेंज लाइन है. दैट इज तो 5% कैगर, वो तो आप एफडी में भी आपको मिल जाएगा. लेकिन अगर आपको ये चाहिए 12% कैगर, देन you have to remain invested. So that patience, that discipline only comes by remaining invested. नहीं नहीं अभी ये कुछ ट्रम्प का टैरिफ है, थोड़े दिन के लिए एसआईपी बंद कर देते हैं, नहीं नहीं अभी तो ईरान इजराइल का कुछ माहौल प्रॉब्लम है तो लेट अस पॉज द सिप फॉर अ फ्यू डेज, नहीं नहीं अभी तो बजट आने वाला है तो लेट स्टॉप, बजट में क्या होगा किसको मालूम, नहीं नहीं अगले साल तो इलेक्शन आने वाले हैं तो लेट्स पॉज एसआईपी, लेट्स नॉट डू एनीथिंग. अगर आप ढूंढने को जाएंगे आपको हर 3 महीने एक्सक्यूज मिलेंगे एसआईपी को पॉज करने के लिए. But the simple point we want to make here is don't pause, don't halt the SIP. SIP is what enables you to benefit from that volatility. Because those who had a SIP in the first week of April, वहाँ पे prices were lower. For the same 1,000 rupees, they got more units of the same scheme that they were trying to buy. Right? Today, when somebody does the SIP, I'm not saying they shouldn't, same 1,000 rupees will get invested, but they will get less units. तो दैट इज द ब्यूटी ऑफ द एसआईपी. जब मार्केट नीचे है वो आपके पॉकेट में ज्यादा यूनिट्स दे देती है, जब मार्केट ज्यादा ऊपर है तो कम यूनिट्स डाल देती है. एंड बाय डूइंग दैट इट इज मेकिंग श्योर दैट इट इज गिविंग यू अ बैलेंस रादर देन यू सेइंग कि नहीं बिकॉज ऑफ दिस आई विल स्टॉप, बिकॉज ऑफ दिस आई विल स्टॉप. स्टॉपिंग एंड पॉजिंग कैन completely wipe out your returns. This is just another version of the behavior gap that I showed you before. We've already talked about this, so I won't go there. Because we have spoken so much about behavior, and because we have just seen another classic example of a market coming down and then starting to rebound, so I thought it's a good opportunity to talk about drawdowns in the marketplace. This is the traditional trajectory of markets. It's like a spring. कुछ ना कुछ होगा, फियर बढ़ेगी, अनसर्टेनिटी बढ़ेगी, कुछ ग्लोबल शॉक्स होंगे, कुछ लोकल शॉक्स होंगे, एक अनप्रेसिडेंटेड क्राइसिस, पीपल विल टॉक अबाउट इट, मार्केट गोज डाउन, बूम, and then suddenly it bounces back. It's like a spring. It's like a spring, and that's why it bounces back, and that's why the forward returns actually improve once it goes down to that bottom. So the question is, who are we? Are we going to be the person who gets that fear, uncertainty, global shocks, crisis and runs away? Or do we say somebody else's crisis is my opportunity, I have converted that crisis into an opportunity, or because I did that, I got the benefit of remaining invested at the bottom, I got the benefit of increasing my investment at the bottom, and because of that, my forward returns actually improve. That is what we want to do as disciplined investors. They say history repeats itself. It doesn't repeat itself 100%, but certainly it rhymes. Each of these are examples. When the market went down a lot, and then how it rebounded every year. 2001 September 11 attacks, when the World Trade Center in New York came down, markets collapsed in that 1 month. Those who ran away at that point of time, loss was theirs. Those who bought in September and 2001, even today their CAGR return of buying in September 2001 must be running at 18 to 20% CAGR. Right? So what this is showing you is that it's like a ECG. वो ECG में कभी कभी बड़े दिन आएंगे, कभी कभी नीचे वाले दिन भी आएंगे, but it is those who are able to tolerate this, and every few years the market will give you a reason to panic. कुछ नया होगा which will cause you to panic. Feeling of crisis is actually a constant, only the reasons keep changing. So we have to figure out how we can take benefit of this. And these are just again some of the examples. Some of you may have lived through them. Many of you are much younger, so maybe you don't remember 2004. Maybe you were in college at that time or school at that time. But at that point there was an election shock. Right? 2004 election mein markets were very optimistic that Prime Minister Vajpayee, who was the PM at that point of time, he would get re-elected as the Prime Minister. It didn't happen. There was a shock election outcome. The Congress actually ended up winning the largest number of seats. Prime Minister Vajpayee lost. That day the market closed down by 17%, 17. I remember it very well because I was supposed to fly out for a holiday to Singapore that night. And I was running a hedge fund at that point of time, and then I cancelled it because you can't abandon your investor money when the market is down 17% on a single day. But simple point is that those who used it as an opportunity, The market actually rebounded nearly 40% over the next 12 months from that low. So, किसी का crisis, किसी और का opportunity, as simple as that. But each of these is an example of same thing. The main point I want to make here is that the story is not relevant. Story is not relevant. Story to kuch bhi aayega. And every time it's a new story. But you can see 9/11, Iraq war, COVID-19, election shock, ILFS credit crisis, Euro crisis. How do we convert all of this into that opportunity so that when it falls at the bottom, we are able to get the benefit of that? मेरा एक बहुत सिंपल रूल है. If anybody is an investor in the market, every 1 to 3 years the market is going to drop 10 to 15%. Every 4 to 5 years it will drop 20 to 30%. Every 10 years it will drop 30 to 50%. हिस्ट्री है भाई, 50 साल का हिस्ट्री है. और यूएस में तो 100 साल का हिस्ट्री है. दिस इज हाउ इट बिहेव्स. देयर इज नो पॉइंट सेइंग कि ऐसा आगे जाके नहीं होगा. होगा. All you have to do is be prepared to be able to tackle that. We will look at how you can get prepared. But this is showing you the same thing, that sometimes the drops can be very extreme. Of course, this was the worst drop which happened, which even I experienced in my career, which was basically around the 2008 global financial crisis. Between January 2008 and October 2008, the market collapsed almost 60% at that point of time, right? So that was really the worst of it. But every time it goes down, it's like a spring, right? When it goes down, this is the worst return at that point of time. This is the actual return at that point of time. Look what happens in the next 1 year. In each of the cases, you can see that spring effect, right? This is the worst point of the drawdown, और जो वो नीचे के लेवल में जिसने खरीदा, ये उनका 1 year forward return है. So this is the spring effect. Every time it falls very violently, it bounces back. You can call it a spring, you can call it a tennis ball. What happens when you drop the tennis ball? It bounces. What happens when you drop the market? Exactly. So when you start with that thought process, you don't panic because it drops. Because you know what happens after it falls. The minute you start thinking like that, then you convert somebody's crisis into your opportunity, right? As simple as that. This is again, as I said earlier, the more you think long term, the more you go beyond that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, time dilutes the volatility. This is just showing you that the average 1 year CAGR has lots more volatility. As you go down towards 5 year, the volatility automatically comes down. So basically just think long term. This is again the same thing. When you get very big drawdowns, you get equally big forward returns. Actually, if you see, in my opinion, this recent drawdown that we got, मतलब ये तो मैं मानता हूँ, this is a garden variety drawdown. Because 10, 12, 13%, as I told you, वो तो हर 1 to 3 साल तो होगा ही होगा. So to me, this was a very normal drawdown. It's nothing outside the ordinary. These were slightly the bigger drawdowns that we have seen in the last 18 years. That was 64% drawdown. March 2020, of course, was a 38% drawdown. But look at the forward returns which happened from that. So again, the purpose is only to be prepared for this. When you are prepared, your client also becomes prepared, you will be able to convert the crisis into an opportunity. So every crisis feels unique till you zoom out. All of them follow the same pattern. I've talked about this, so I won't talk about it more. Again, US invasion of Iraq 2003, you can see market comes down, then it recovers. Israel-Hamas war, it comes down, then again it recovers. Operation Sindoor, very small drawdown, then once again it recovers. So again, war and markets, this is a very standard story we have seen all across the world. Nothing very unusual about that. My apologies for this slide. This was actually on a PowerPoint slide, so the film doesn't work. But anyway, it doesn't matter. We've already covered most of these. Again, I won't repeat all of these. These are all showing you different instances of drawdowns and how over 1 year, 3 year period it got converted into much better returns. So once again, crisis or opportunity, choice is yours. How you decide to think about it. I made this 10 days back. Abhi to Mr. Trump has already announced peace. वो है कि नहीं मुझे भी नहीं मालूम. But anyway, in a way, some of this is irrelevant. I think you all have already seen how the spring works. Next time it happens again, just make sure you grab the opportunity. So what is it that I would leave with you as a few thoughts in terms of what is important? Reinforce the SIP discipline. Pausing the investments, halting the investments doesn't work. And also I want to say one thing here, because sometimes I see people say कि अरे I opened one more SIP. One more SIP से कुछ नहीं होता है, because anyway you are already doing a SIP. My normal principle is that the market comes down a little. Every year if you are doing 12 SIPs, that year you do 13 SIPs. मतलब कि you are putting 1 lakh every year into a SIP, market has come down 10%. Write a lump sum investment of 1 lakh, it becomes your 13th SIP installment, right? So reinforce the SIP discipline. When it comes down a lot, increase the allocation that you are making to equity. Staggered investments are a great way to tackle volatility. We already discussed this. You don't know what the future holds. You don't know kabhi volatility वापस आ जाएगी. So when you stagger your investment, it automatically takes care of that problem. Shift the narrative. If you start talking about crisis, client also thinks. See, this is actually all studies have shown that we may be very sophisticated as human beings. We think we are sophisticated today, but deep inside us there is still one animal sitting. That animal is that same, जैसे बोलते हैं ना, Darwin's theory that you went from being ape to becoming a human being. So somewhere deep inside there is still that ape which is sitting inside us. There is a monkey sitting inside us, and that monkey knows only one rule. What is that rule? That when attacked, either you run or you fight. It's what psychologists call the fight or flee response. Flee meaning to run away, right? So that is what we have to do to shift the narrative so that the customer doesn't flee, they actually decide to fight. But that is the natural body response, and there is a reason why it exists. If there isn't the fire in the building, what do I want you to do? I want you to flee. So there is a very strong reason why all of us are conditioned to fight or flee. But in markets, we have to train people to say, please stay there, use the crisis as an opportunity, don't flee from the crisis. So this is the most important, that I think each and every one of you, if you do this, it will not only work for you as an investor, it will handhold your clients into getting the returns that they wish to get. Just jump through this. Yeah, this is just something I wanted to show you, which is a fatal error. The most fatal error that I have seen in my investing career is, one, people not diversifying. Their entire investment is in one stock, it is in one scheme, it is in one property, it is in just one asset lying locked in some particular place. That involves lack of diversification. And history tells you one thing: single assets can go to zero. Diversified portfolios never go to zero, right? In my career, the one company that I saw which went from being a Sensex stocks to zero was a company called Satyam Computer. At one time, people used to talk about it the way they talked about TCS or Infosys, but eventually it turned out to be a scandal and went to zero. If you had your entire 100% of your money in Satyam and it went to zero, it's a disaster. If you had a portfolio which included Satyam, doesn't matter, it is 1%, it goes to zero, but your portfolio can bounce back because something else gives you the reason to think. So these, to my mind, are the two fatal errors that you need to prevent yourself from committing, because if you commit these errors, you will not get the spring effect, right? So what are the two fatal errors which prevent the spring effect from working? One is putting all your money in a single investment, don't do it. Second, trading on margin or investing on margin, doesn't matter. Because then when the crisis happens, your broker will be calling you saying ki sir aap thoda margin bhar do, and if you don't pay the margin, they will sell the portfolio for you. So investing with borrowed money or trading with borrowed money is the original sin, And the next biggest sin I would say is putting all your investments into just one single stock or one single fund, one single property. Then you are not diversified. Single assets can go to zero, but diversified portfolios never go to zero. So these are two fatal errors which will prevent the spring from working to your advantage. Finally, Jeff Bezos is asked this question about, he was asked by somebody on his investor call that, what's going to change in the next 10 years and how will you take advantage of it? And his response is that I don't think about what will change in the next 10 years. Why? Because he also says I can't predict it. Right? So that's the reason he doesn't think about what will change for the next 10 years. But he says something very interesting. He says, I built my business around what is not going to change in the next 10 years. And why did he say this? He said, why did I build my business around the principle that what will not change in the next 10 years? He said, when I thought about it, I came to the conclusion that no customer is going to call me and say, अरे Bezos भाई, आपने इतना बढ़िया Amazon product बनाया है, अब मेरे से और थोड़ा पैसा ले लो. कोई बोलेगा उनसे? नहीं ना. So he said, my business is built on that very simple principle. What are the things that the customer will never change in terms of attitude? He said, one, they will always want variety. Second, they will always want the lowest possible price. So rather than me trying to understand how things will change in the next 10 years, I chose to build my business on these two principles of what will not change. What will not change is the customer desire for variety, the customer desire for low prices, and the customer desire for quicker delivery. So he built his entire business model around these are the three things that will never change in the customer behavior. Let me just always focusing on these three, and then I will build a wonderful business. And we know what a great business he has built today. Today people talk about Amrit Kal, about Viksit Bharat, how to invest. How many of you know the compound interest formula? Everybody must be knowing. I think 6th standard, 7th standard, they must have taught it to us, right? Amount is equal to principal into 1 plus r to the power n. Right? Everybody remembers that? 5th, 6th standard mein sikhaya tha humko. When they taught me this formula in school, honestly, even I didn't realize the implication of it. Then when I came to the stock market and I started to learn about compounding, I realized what a powerful formula it is. But the thing that I want you to remember about the compound interest formula is that everybody is focused on R. R is what? The magic of compounding is not in R. It is in? Exactly. This is what doesn't change. वो विकसित भारत 2047 में आए कि 2042 में आएगा कि 2052 में आएगा, ना तो मुझे मालूम, ना तो आपको मालूम, ना किसी को मालूम. Right? But if you understand the simple principle that n is the most powerful variable, then nothing else matters. Right? So that is the one thing that I want you to remember, that in that investors' pursuit of trying to run the marathon, of trying to achieve their financial goals, it is a marathon, it is not a sprint. Crisis versus opportunity we already talked about. How do you position every crisis as an opportunity for your investor? Valuations matter. Story jo bhi ho. Eventually, returns are a function of valuations plus the earnings growth that accrue to you as an investor over a period of time. So valuations matter. How do you make sure that you can handle the volatility? Asset allocation is your friend. How much of your money is in equity? How much is in fixed income? How much is in property? How much is in gold? I don't believe any asset class is fundamentally good or only fundamentally bad. Everything has a role in your portfolio. Only thing that doesn't have a role in your portfolio is maybe chit fund and rose teak plantation. Those are Ponzi schemes. So stay away from those. But every asset class has a role in your portfolio because asset allocation is your friend. We already talked about diversification. Diversification is important. Diversification is the key to survival. Right? Very important to understand. Why survival is important? Because you want to maximize that N. If you want to maximize that N, you don't want to do the things that can compromise your ability to stay there for the entire journey. Don't borrow to invest. Don't invest in a single security. All of those file into that same thing of key to survival. And diversification, single assets can go to zero. Diversified portfolios don't go to zero. Leverage is dangerous, we already talked about. And finally, compounding, N is more important than R. So these are nothing but my cheat sheet. We started at the behavior gap कि fund का return यहाँ पे है, invest का return यहाँ पे है. What is that difference? That difference is nothing but the behavior gap. How can we as advisors, as people who wish well for our clients, how can we ensure that we make them jump across that gap and create returns that will allow them to achieve their goals, that will allow them to achieve their financial aspirations? This is the simple 6-7 points that you need to remember. If you are able to remember these, you will create a better financial future for yourself as well as for your client, because as I said, our purpose at UTI is Hak Ek Behtar Zindagi Ka, for each and every investor who has their aspirations to see a better tomorrow. So that's about it from my side in terms of the thoughts I wanted to share. Thank you all for being such a patient audience. Thank you.